This silver bridge was a suspension bridge built in 1928 and named for the color of its aluminium paint. The bridge connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia and Canorga, Ohio, over the Ohio River. Analysis showed that the bridge was carrying much heavier loads than it had originally been designed for and had been poorly maintained. The collapsed bridge was replaced by the Silver Memorial Bridge, which was completed in 1969. In March 25, 1947, the Centralia No. 5 coal mine exploded near the town of Centralia, Illinois, killing 111 people. The explosion was caused when an underburdened explosive detonation ignited coal dust. At the time of the explosion, 142 men were in the mine. 111 miners were killed by burns and other injuries. Only 31 miners escaped. Following the disaster, John L. Lewis, president of the United Mine Workers, called a 2-week national memorial work stoppage on 400,000 soft coal miners. The following year, 1948, a different type of industrial disaster struck the United States, this one invisible, but no less deadly than the explosion in Centralia in 1947. The Donora smog was an historic air inversion pall of smog that killed 20 and sickened 7,000 people in Donora, Pennsylvania. A study released in December 1948 showed that thousands more Donora residents could have been killed if the smog had lasted any longer than it had. U.S. Steel never acknowledged responsibility for the incident, calling it an act of God. The Buffalo Creek flood was a disaster that occurred on February 26, 1972, when the Pittston Coal Company's coal slurry impoundment dam, located on a hillside in Logan County, West Virginia, burst 4 days after having been declared satisfactory by a federal mine inspector. The resulting flood unleashed approximately 132 million gallons of black wastewater. Out of a population of 5,000 people, 125 were killed. 1,121 were injured, and over 4,000 were left homeless. 507 houses were destroyed, in addition to 44 mobile homes and 30 businesses. The Willow Island disaster was the collapse of a cooling tower under construction at a power station at Willow Island, West Virginia, on Thursday, April 27, 1978. Falling concrete caused the scaffolding to collapse. 51 construction workers were killed. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, offshore, investigation showed that, like most disasters, it was a series of errors, shortcuts and accidents that triggered the event. Scaffold was attached to concrete that hadn't had time to sufficiently cure. The second major construction project industrial disaster to make this list occurred 9 years later. The Lambians Plaza was a 16-story residential project under construction in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Its partially erect frame completely collapsed on April 23, 1987, killing 28 construction workers. The entire structure collapsed, first the West Tower and then the East Tower, in 5 seconds. Only 5 seconds longer than it would have taken an object to free fall from that height. The explosion at the Imperial sugar refinery was an industrial disaster that occurred on February 7, 2008 in Port Wentworth, Georgia. 13 people were killed and 42 injured when a dust explosion occurred at a sugar refinery owned by Imperial Sugar. The explosion occurred at 7 p.m. local time in what was initially believed to be a room where sugar was bagged by workers. There were 112 employees on site at the time. Most of the victims were seriously burned, with ages ranging from 18 to 50. On March 23, 2005, A fire and explosion occurred at BP's Texas City refinery in Texas City, Texas, killing 15 workers and injuring more than 170 others. BP was charged with violating federal environment crime laws and has been subject to lawsuits from the victims' families. Later, an $87 million fine was imposed by the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which claimed that BP had failed to implement safety improvements following the disaster. The BP refinery explosion was hardly the worst industrial disaster to strike this town or state. The year 1947 was a very bad year for industrial disasters. Only 3 weeks after the Centralia mining disaster, on April 16, 1947, a fire started on board the French-registered vessel SS Grand Camp in the port of Texas City, Texas. Over 5,000 people were injured, with 1,784 admitted to 21 area hospitals. More than 500 homes were destroyed and hundreds damaged, leaving 2,000 homeless. The seaport was destroyed. The property damage was estimated at $100 million. A 2-ton anchor of Grand Camp was hurled 162 miles and found in a 10-foot crater. Vermiculite, an ore found in the area of Libby, Montana in 1881, had been mined since 1919 and sold under the brand name Zonalite. Vermiculite is a mineral that was used mostly as an insulator in homes and is also an additive in potting soil. The EPA estimates more than 274 area deaths were caused by asbestos-related diseases. On May 8, 2009, a jury found W.R. Grace & Company and the accused employees not guilty on all counts, ending what was called the biggest environmental crime prosecution in U.S. history.